So in this video I will try to explain a concept that relates to non-duality and how to understand the whole process leading up to non-duality and what it's really all about. And if you take a look at the demonic level, I have made a dotted black line on the scale there, and that represents where most people who are seekers on the path have usually experienced a low point in their life, usually in young adulthood or something like that, in that level. So that's a good starting point. So most seekers and spiritual people on the path have been born in the 300s in my experience, and then they drop down below 200 at some point, which is the low point in their life, in which a turning point happens, and they quickly usually get out of it and have a life-changing experience, and then they move rapidly up the scale, regaining their birth level and beyond. So what is this dotted line anyway? It represents the borderline or the boundary between subject and object. You are the subject. If you look at yourself, you can say I'm this and that, but if it boils down to this, you are a subject perceiving so-called external or seemingly external objects. That's what it boils down to. If you cut down to brass tacks, it's one duality that starts it all. The duality of subject and object. And nobody can deny, if they look at themselves, that hey, I'm whatever I am, I'm a subject because I perceive objects outside of myself. And that's a duality. And then you have many other dualities. You have black and white, you have up and down, evil and good and evil, and all, the whole universe is seemingly filled with dualities and opposites. But that all comes from the original opposite of subject and object, which we will explore more in this video. So in this level, in the demonic level, in the below 200, when your subject-object line is drawn there, you will barely perceive anything deeper in your mind, because it's all behind you, it's all repressed. I mean, anything to the right of that dotted line, behind that dotted line, is repressed into your subconscious and unconscious. So it's basically your karma. And anything in front of that line is objects. So you see at this level, you can barely see, you can barely perceive anything in your own mind and what goes on on the deeper levels. And all you see is the outside, so-called outside reality, and a little bit of your thoughts. It's like you have a big wave and you're only seeing the tip of the wave. At this level, you don't see much of what's driving the wave and the force behind it. So you're very unconscious, and you basically, you're ruled by all these unconscious forces. You can't help it, and it's kind of mechanical in many ways, and you perceive very strongly that the world is objects, and also maybe even you perceive, at least some people do, other people as kind of objects too, not even humans, depending on how deep in the demonic you are. And then you move, something happens, and you move a little higher, in right above 200. It's a big deal for most seekers. They can probably remember a turning point when suddenly everything sort of changed and you felt a lot better, and you got your head above water for the first time in a long time, and now you have moved the subject-object line a little bit deeper down in your subconscious, sort of. So now you have seen that, hey, if I change, my whole life changes, everything changes, my world changes, everything changes if I change internally. So it's a big lesson to see that happen, and it's a very important step in most people's and seekers' life. So then you move into emotionality, the level of emotionality in which a lot of repressed emotions start to come to the surface. A lot of stuff that haven't been dealt with, maybe in childhood and growing up. So a lot of anger and it can be a bit of a chaotic situation because so many emotions need to express themselves and be heard by you as they leave you. So this is just, you have to ride this storm off and allow as much as possible to come up, and the sooner you do, the quicker you will get rid of it and move it to the next level, which is the level of reason. So now you have really gone pretty far down and dug into your subconscious and karma, and you have come to a sort of kind of a crystallized level in which you have gotten rid of most of the repressed negative emotions and chaos of that level, and you're ruled by reason. You seem like a really solid person in this level to most people, because most people in the world are lower. So you will look and act and be a very solid person usually at this level, and have a good life, have a good sound career, and all these things. You might not even, don't have to be consciously spiritual or seeking anything. Just if you are at this level, you will manifest a pretty solid life usually. And then if you breach that level, you're moving into more of the mystery levels again, and that is the level of love, close to the borderline of non-duality, which is what this video is really about. I just had to lead you through the process a little bit so you understand the concept and the context. So now you're close, super close to the magic boundary of non-duality, and this is the whole point, because what is this dotted line of which divides who you are, you as a subject, and the so-called objects in the external reality? Why do you have this line anyway? I mean, why are you not in non-duality all the time, if that is the true nature and who you really are, your identity? Is because obviously you need this subject-object line as long as you have repressed stuff in your subconscious that you need to deal with, because what you're doing is you're dividing your subconscious and your unconscious from you, from who you see yourself as. And you're doing that because you have too much stuff, and everybody does usually, or if you're born in this world, you will take in enough stuff that you will have to have this line. You can't be born enlightened and then live enlightened all your life. It's impossible. You will soak in a lot of the negativity from the mass consciousness, from your parents and whatever, and it will fill up your subconscious, and you will have created this borderline because you need it. It's an artificial line, but you need it because repressing stuff is by definition drawing a line between who you are and what you don't want to face and don't want to be part of you. So you have it repressed. And when you unrepress it, or you allow it to be released and integrated, and then the borderline moves closer to non-duality. And in the level of love, or the low 600 level, you can see that I call it the core of the ego, because the rest of the scale has a tree that becomes, if you see the white lines, it forms a kind of a tree that becomes more and more complex the deeper you, or the more down on the scale you go, and it becomes more and more chaotic and unclear. And the higher you go, or the closer to non-duality you go, the more simple it becomes, because you're simplifying your whole makeup, your whole operation system, you might call it. It's not full of bugs and bogus programs anymore. You've simplified it down to the core functions that it should have. And the core function of the ego is just a lens that focuses you into the physical reality as a separate person from physical reality. So that's why it's represented here on the scale by a single laser beam, you might say. And at that level, especially above 540, your mind will be focused like a laser beam. So whatever you put your mind on, be that a person or concepts or books, philosophies, or anything, you will, if you focus on it long enough, you will penetrate deeper and deeper into you realize the essence of whatever it is. You become very sharp at that level, and especially in the lower 600s, you become almost a little bit too sharp. You become inhumane in certain ways. You become very straight to the point, straight to the business. You don't have much of a soft edge at that level. You don't have patience for all sorts of fluff and bullshit. You just become very straight to the point and laser sharp. And I've been at 6:30, around 6:35 for more than a year, and I know a lot about how it works at that level. And many people don't have to be there. I mean, it depends. I have been there, but many people they will jump from the 500s into non-duality and higher, just in one big jump. But not me. I landed in lower 600s before non-duality, and there's probably a reason for that. I mean, it gives me a lot of insights to a level that many people haven't really explored as deeply, because they became enlightened from the 500s. But anyway, the point is that this mystery of non-duality and what it is all about, it's not really that mysterious if you think about it. It's just what happens is that the dotted line, the subject-object line, that is you are the subject and you're perceiving objects. And I'm including thought objects, feelings, and whatever objects you perceive in your mind is also included in the objects. And the deeper you go, the more of the mind objects and subtle mind objects you can observe. So in the beginning, at the demonic level, you can barely observe anything in your mind because you're run by everything. It's behind you. But at the level of love and low 600s, you become very perceptive of your own, what comes up in your mind and in general. And soon, if you reach non-duality, then what happens is that the artificial borderline between you as a subject and the subconscious is no longer needed, because it's not the whole subconscious and the karma has been worked out, has been integrated. So then the artificial borderline between subject and object disappears, and now you become back to your natural state of non-duality and enlightenment. And that means that now suddenly, when the object-subject line has disappeared, it becomes obvious that you are one with everything. That's how it's always been, but there has been an artificial line drawn because you had to use that line as a filter to filter up, because you couldn't handle facing everything from your subconscious at once. You would go crazy. That's why you needed a filter and a false line, and that false boundary line created the whole duality of object and subject. And that is no longer needed, so that what happens is that the whole object-subject line disappears, and now your identity is one with everything, and all so-called opposites and dualities, they disappear too. And it becomes very obvious that at the whole universe and everything in it, there is no black and white as a duality, because you can't perceive one without the other. So they're basically the same thing. You can't perceive a star in the sky if it wasn't for the black background. So maybe you're focusing on the star and you think, oh, black is opposite of white. But actually what you're seeing is both black and white as the same thing, because you couldn't perceive one without the other, right? That's how it goes for all the so-called opposites. They're not really opposites, they're the same, they're all the same. So everything becomes obviously part of the same big process, ongoing process of life and the universe. And that is how you realize that you have reached non-duality, is that when it becomes very obvious and completely obvious that everything is one, and your identity is one with everything. So I hope that clarified the mystery of non-duality and what it is all about, and also a little bit about the process of spiritual growth, which is basically just moving your subject-object boundary closer and closer to the non-duality borderline until it disappears, because there's no need for it anymore when your whole subconscious has been cleansed out.